When Haruto Amakawa was forced apart with his childhood friend Ayase Miharu years ago, he promised they would meet again, a promise sealed with the childhood vow of marriage. Now, after years of hard work, Haruto has returned to their city, determined to reunite. But his arrival is met with unexpected complications and a sudden twist of fate that catapults him and his friends into an alternate, perilous world. With the arrival of the moving truck, Ayase breaks into tears, seeing her best friend leave. Ayase Miharu was Haruto Amakawa's childhood friend. They lived in apartments next to each other and grew up together until Haruto's parents divorced, forcing them to part ways. Even before being separated, they were already very special to each other. Before he left, Haruto promised he'd see her again, while the girl swore that the two of them would get married one day. Years later, Haruto worked hard to get accepted into a prestigious school in the city where they both lived. His father finally granted him permission to return on the condition that he took on a part-time job to support himself. After all, the young man needed money to cover his expenses. Looking around, he spotted a girl and immediately recognized her as Miharu. Just as he was about to call out to her, a guy named Takahisa approached her, as they had planned to do something together. When he was about to put his arm around her, another girl named Satsuki showed up, grumbling that he had come there with her. So the three of them left together. Haruto stayed behind but managed a small smile, accepting the situation. Soon, the trio arrived at a spot where Aki and Masato were waiting for them. Satsuki commented on how much they had grown, and Masato responded by saying that the girl had become even more beautiful, making Aki nervous and Satsuki beam with happiness. They were all gathered to celebrate having passed another year in school. However, on that very day, the five of them were transported to an alternate world. In the process, Aisha, sensing something strange, quickly alerted Haruto. The rest of the group was lost in this bizarre universe, having no idea where they had ended up. To make matters worse, there was no phone signal. Suddenly, a huge man with a sword approached them. Meanwhile, Haruto was heading southeast, guided by Aisha. Along the way, he encountered a strange magical cloud and decided to check it out. In the middle of the mist, he found a pink cell phone. In another part of that world, at a camp filled with armed men, the newly arrived teens were thrown into a cell with several others, except for Miharu, who was taken away by a man in a top hat. She tried to communicate with him, but he spoke a different language. Aki screamed for her friend, but a soldier whipped the bars to silence her. In the midst of all this, Haruto noticed smoke in the distance and made his way towards it. It was the location where the group from Earth had been taken, and as soon as the guards noticed a stranger approaching, one of them whistled to alert the others. They quickly dropped the tarps over the cages to hide the imprisoned children, just as Haruto arrived, searching for the person who had dropped the phone he had found. The man in the top hat, who seemed to be the leader of the soldiers, claimed he had never seen the phone in his life. Assessing the situation, Haruto knew that picking a fight under these circumstances wouldn't be in his favor, so he apologized and turned to leave. However, Aki cried out for help in Japanese, which caught Haruto's attention. The leader of the group remarked that his new merchandise was a bit noisy, but the stranger responded that the people who had just spoken were the ones he was looking for and asked what was going on there. The leader was surprised that this boy could speak the prisoner's language and ordered his men to kill him. As the soldiers drew their weapons and moved to surround Haruto, he quickly realized they were well organized and accustomed to fighting as a unit. The leader remarked that the boy had mistaken courage for recklessness, but Haruto showed no signs of fear despite being outnumbered. On the contrary, he lunged at one of his opponents, who managed to defend himself and counterattack with photon bullet magic. While fighting off other enemies, Haruto reflected on his plan to take the leader hostage to force the others into negotiating, but it wasn't going to be easy. Realizing he had no other choice, he drew his swords and took down two enemies in front of him. Seeing the intruder closing in, the mage soldier hurled a fireball at him, believing he'd hit his target. But Haruto emerged from the smoke, throwing his swords at his rival. The man deflected the incoming weapons, but it left him open for Haruto's quick attack as he seized the enemy's own dagger and drove it into his chest. With that, the remaining thugs hesitated to advance, and their leader wet his pants in fear. Haruto removed his glove and set it on fire, then ordered the prisoners to be freed, a command the bandit leader obeyed immediately. Without delay, Haruto surprised Aki and Masato by speaking to them in Japanese. He promised to explain everything later, but first needed to know if any other people had been captured along with them. Masato mentioned that they had a friend in another cart, so Haruto made his way there and broke the lock using a special technique. Upon looking inside, he was shocked to find that the prisoner was none other than Ayase Miharu. Afterwards, he led the three of them back, while telepathically asking Aisha to meet up with him before sunset. Aisha responded that she would bring Celia with her. Speaking of the sunset, Miharu paused for a moment to admire it and then asked Haruto if they could talk. She thanked him for saving her and then asked the hero's name. The boy stammered as he replied that he was currently in the middle of a situation and was being called Haruto for now. Miharu and Aki were left speechless at the sound of that name, while the boy realized that the small girl was named Aki and remembered that Haruto had a sister 3 years younger than him, although he had never met her. To make sure, he asks if something's wrong because of the reactions, but Aki says it's nothing. Masato wonders why Haruto doesn't have a last name before introducing himself as Sendo Masato, Aki's younger brother. With that, the hero reflects that Amakawa Haruto didn't have a younger brother and Masato didn't have the Amakawa last name either. So maybe Haruto's mother remarried and had a child with another man. With that in mind, he asks Aki for her last name and she says it's also Sendo. With that, Haruto promises to explain why he doesn't have a last name as soon as they get somewhere more comfortable. Without wasting time, he finds a suitable place and uses his ability, Undo, raising a huge stone from the ground that has a home inside it. At that moment, Aisha arrives with Celia, speaking in the language of this world, Australian. Celia is happy to see her friend again, so Haruto introduces the inhabitants of Earth and then shares that Celia Claire was once his teacher. After the introductions, Aisha kisses her friend on the forehead, provoking a magical reaction. Then she repeats the process with Miharu, creating a temporary connection between the two who were kissed. This allows them to understand each other's language. Haruto didn't know Aisha could do that, so she explains that it's only possible because he understands both languages, otherwise she wouldn't be able to do it. With that said, she confesses her stomach is growling, so the host invites everyone inside the stone. Once inside, the homeowner offers a bath to anyone who wants one. As Masato celebrates this opportunity, his sister calls him lazy, and everyone laughs. When the girls gather for the bath, Miharu learns that Haruto's real name is Ryo, and that Aisha is a spirit who made a pact with him. Celia was the one who told her this, but since she also just met Aisha today, she doesn't know many more details. Aki approaches to learn more about the conversation, and Miharu explains that Aisha isn't human, but rather a spirit of nature. After the bath, it's time for everyone to eat, and Masato asks if they're basically in a fantasy RPG world. Haruto responds that he didn't play many games like that in his past life, so he's not sure. But it seems something like that, although it's different from a game because there's no reset button. Since that's the case, the boy asks if things would have gone badly for them if Haruto hadn't shown up, and Haruto tells him that they all would become slaves. Celia then arrives, thanking the host for offering such a wonderful bath, and when Haruto notices she's wearing completely different clothes, she explains that Aki lent them to her because, according to Aki, it would be weird to wear a wedding dress again after a bath. Speaking of which, thinking that the newly arrived group doesn't have any other clothes, Ryo decides to buy some essentials tomorrow. Miharu remembers that they don't have any money, but Ryo offers to cover whatever's needed. Celia asks where the shopping will take place, and he thinks Amand would be a good spot. Celia is pleased with the idea and wonders if it would be possible to sell her wedding dress for money. Once again, Ryo assures them that they don't need to worry about money, and then invites everyone to eat. Seeing the table full of food, Celia asks if Ryo prepared everything, which he confirms. During the meal, Ryo learns that the group was brought here by a phenomenon caused by summoning magic. Miharu wants to know if it's possible to return to Earth, but Haruto admits he doesn't have an answer for that because this situation is very different from his own rebirth in this world. Aki mentions that Haruto died in a traffic accident when he was a university student, so she asks if those memories came back to him when he was a child in this world. Ryo confirms they did, and that's why he believes his experience is important for the newcomers. Celia reflects on everything and concludes that the 6 pillars of light they saw along with the events of this year, the year 1000 of the Sacred Era, might be connected to the legend of the 6 wise gods. To that, Ryo says that 1,000 years after the Divine Demon War, 6 sacred stones will shine in different colors and pillars of light will rise to the sky. Then heroes clad in powerful divine robes will return from outside Strahl, and in place of the 6 wise gods, they will lead all of humanity. Still, Ryo can't imagine that these are the heroes mentioned in the legend, and Celia agrees. By the way, Miharu remembers that they were with other people when they came to this world, Statsuki and Takahisa, so maybe they're here too. Ryo isn't sure but considers it a possibility. Miharu shows great concern about this because she and her friends were saved by Ryo, but the others might not have been so lucky, especially in a completely foreign and hostile place. As the conversation winds down, Aisha yawns in the middle of the table, gets up, and pulls Ryo toward the bedroom because she's sleepy and needs her human pillow to make up for the long day. Ryo asks for just a minute, but Aisha can't wait any longer since she used up a lot of her power today. As soon as she says that, she collapses onto her companion's chest, though still managing to stand. Celia loses her composure at the scene, interpreting it as crossing some kind of boundary, but the spirit explains she's just recharging and that she always sleeps with Haruto. Seeing her teacher's total meltdown, Ryo explains there's a good reason for it. Visibly flustered, Celia shouts that he hasn't even bathed yet, while Miharu awkwardly raises her hand, offering to clear the table. Likewise, the siblings join in to avoid watching the scene any longer. After that, Ryo escorts Celia to her room and then returns to his own. Now alone, the boy thinks to himself that he never imagined he would meet Miharu again in this world, and he wonders what she would do if she found out he had the old memories of Haruto. However, he quickly concludes that he is no longer Haruto. He has his own life as Ryo. A long time ago, he decided to get his hands dirty to seek revenge on that man, and Amakawa Haruto is already dead. Just then, Celia knocks on her student's door, wanting to chat with him. So he serves tea to his teacher, something that hadn't happened in quite some time. Getting straight to the point and taking advantage of the fact that no one else was around, Celia wants to know where Haruto found Ayase, as well as what this past life talk is all about. After saying all this, she realizes she might have crossed a line and apologizes, but Ryo answers one question at a time. First, he explains that he has memories of a past life, and that person came from the same world as Miharu and the others. That's why he understands Japanese. On that note, he recalls the moment when his teacher first met him in the slums. Ryo had recovered the memories of his past life shortly before that, and the name of that person was Haruto. That's when Celia realizes why he chose Haruto as his pseudonym. In those memories, Ryo was 20 years old, older than Celia. By the way, she comments that the young boy always seems strangely mature for someone his age and thanks him for kidnapping her, as it allowed her to be with him. The girl feels relieved for that reason, although she's still worried about her father. She at least wanted to let him know she's okay. Ryo suggests she write a letter, and when she gets excited by the idea, he assures her that tomorrow they'll go buy stationery at the Rika Guild. Meanwhile, in Beltran, the capital of the Beltran Kingdom, Charles is informed by Reese that recent events have been a disaster. No one could have predicted his wife would be kidnapped. In response, Charles says the culprit has already been punished, and according to reports, after being struck by Alfred's attack, there was no trace left of him. However, Charles still has no clue about Celia's whereabouts. At the moment, the capital's borders are sealed to allow a thorough search across the territory. Upon hearing this, Reese analyzes that the boy and the spirit probably hid Celia's location, which is quite a bold move on their part. Charles adds that a hero has descended into the kingdom, and his own father has taken custody of him. Reese hopes that the hero will become a loyal ally to the kingdom of Beltram, but confesses he was hoping the kingdom had secured another sacred stone. To that, Charles replies that the stone is with Princess Flora and Duke Huguenot, and by now they're likely welcoming the hero. It's a troublesome situation as they might be considered traitors for aligning with the kingdom of Galark. Speaking of that kingdom, Reese notes that among the guests was Liselot Krisha from the Rika Merchants Guild, a very talented woman. The issue for the other man is that she's only 15, but Reese disagrees, saying that Liselot and the Rika Guild are as much of a menace as Duke Huguenot's faction. If measures aren't taken soon, something bad could happen. In Rodania, the capital of Rodan, a girl named Rona serves food to a young man. He asks her to sit down for a bit, as he doesn't like seeing her standing, so Rona politely accepts the invitation. Another noble admits that he never thought he would be able to invite a legendary hero into his home, which is a great honor. So if the young man wants anything, he just needs to say so. Hearing this, the boy finds it amusing to be called a legendary hero, because these people seem to think that internet-published novels reflect reality. A few days ago, this young man was resting peacefully in bed until he was suddenly flung into a new fantasy world. Thrown onto a strange grassy field, he stands up and notices dozens of soldiers surrounding him, so he panics trying to figure out where he is. Flora Beltram introduces herself as the second princess of Beltram, while a man says he is Duke Gustav Huguenot, the princess's guardian. The boy, who ended up in this world by pure chance, realizes that these nobles' arrival seems like something straight out of an Isekai summoning story, and when Flora mistakes him for a hero, he becomes certain of it. According to the prophecy left by the 6 wise gods, 1,000 years after the foundation of the sacred era, heroes will appear wherever the sacred stones are. Flora believes the katana in his hand is a clear sign that he's a hero. Without even realizing it, the boy notices he's holding a beautiful sword, which stirs his geeky heart. Soon, he's feeling full of swagger and claims to understand the situation. Inside, though, he thinks this whole story is pretty weak, especially since the people of this world somehow understand Japanese. Then Flora asks the name of the summoned hero, and he replies that it's Sakata Hiroki. Back in the present moment, he's sitting at a table full of food, but has no idea what this meeting is really about. Whatever it is, he plans to play it cool and act like he's above the others. To be honest, he admits that all this hero talk is making him a bit confused, so he asks if it was the princess's sacred stone that brought him here. Flora thinks so, and Sakata assumes that if he was brought here, he can probably go back. Regarding that, the princess also finds it odd, as a hero isn't supposed to even mention that. Sakata begins to believe that he was kidnapped since he had his own life in his original world and was brought here against his will. The girl apologizes, saying that recent events have left her lost too, and Sakata replies that he's not blaming anyone, but he's clearly the one in the toughest spot here. Guster's son, Stuart, comments that the hero is being disrespectful to Her Highness, so his father scolds him not to interfere. Afterward, the Duke apologizes for the boy's rudeness and promises to explain everything about his current situation. For his part, Sakata is now genuinely interested in the matter. In the meantime, Ryo steps out of his hidden cave to go shopping with Celia and Miharu. Miharu asks the two siblings to take care of everything properly while they're out, and Ryo explains that there's a barrier around the house, but the siblings still shouldn't try to leave. Suddenly, Ayase appears and picks up Miharu in her arms, flying ahead through the sky. The siblings watch in awe as Ryo wonders if he could carry Miharu the same way. Soon enough, all four of them are soaring through the sky, and Miharu is mesmerized by the view from above. Celia asks Ayase how much she knows about Ryo, and she replies that she knows almost everything, as Haruto's memories flow to her through their pact. In other words, Ayase and Ryo share these memories, their consciousnesses deeply connected, which is the nature of a spirit pact given how closely spirits are bound. With that, Celia admits feeling a bit uneasy about Ayase knowing a side of Ryo that she doesn't, but the spirit reassures her, explaining that Haruto is different now, slowly learning to trust others. She adds that if Haruto now knows good people, it's thanks to Celia, because when Haruto was all alone, Celia was the first to reach out to him. When they arrive, Ryo explains to Miharu why she needs to call Celia by the name Cecilia. It's also time for everyone to change their hair color before entering the city to avoid any issues. With that done, they enter Amand, the merchant city of the Kingdom of Galark. At one point, Miharu asks why there's such a long line in the street, and Ryo explains it's for a menju shop, a local specialty. The Rika Guild offers a variety of foods and pastries that resemble those from Earth. Next, the group arrives at the Rika Guild, where they are greeted by Chloe, who is in charge of attending to visitors that day. Ryo asks Chloe to take care of his friends while he goes off for about an hour, and Celia takes the opportunity to try on some clothes upstairs. While Ryo deals with some matters, the girls spend time at the Merchant Guild, and Celia encourages Miharu to try on some clothes too, though the girl is extremely shy. Still, she agrees, and despite her embarrassment, she ends up trying on some outfits along with the others. Meanwhile, Ryo hasn't found any useful leads, and realizing things are moving fast, he sees no other options. Chloe asks if Celia needs anything else, and she replies that she'd like to check out some stationery items. Ryo arrives and asks Miharu if she found anything she'd like to buy, and he suddenly notices she's holding a bra in her hand. He quickly turns around and apologizes. In any case, he advises her to take it easy with the shopping and not worry about him. After saying that, Ryo leaves, but Miharu asks him to try on an outfit she set aside for him. When he does, he realizes how perfectly it suits him, and all the girls agree. Seeing this, Ryo decides to take the outfit as he's running out of options in his wardrobe, and Chloe mentions a promotion on men's clothing. If he buys another item, he gets a discount. Ryo compliments the Rika Guild's selling skills, and Celia asks if she can pick out the next outfit for him. Later, back at the guest house, Liselot is informed by Aria that it'll take some time before the borders reopen. Liselot believes Beltrum wants to control the flow of information on this matter. Because of this, she can't conduct business, essentially leaving her stuck there. Aria suggests that her mistress take this time to relax and enjoy herself, and the young lady likes the idea. After all, Duke Arbor's reputation has been ruined, which is quite entertaining for the Kingdom of Galark and worthy of celebration. On that note, Aria expresses sympathy for the Duke's fiancée Celia, as she's an old friend of hers. Aria suspects that someone hostile to Duke Arbor's family is behind what happened, while the blue-haired girl points out that amidst the chaos, heroes have emerged, and one has likely been summoned to the Kingdom of Galark, which would be a great thing. Liselot concludes by saying she needs to hurry and return as soon as possible. Back at Ryo's house, the girls brought back an endless amount of clothes that Celia and Miharu picked out. They truly hope Ryo likes all of them, and the siblings try on a few as well. In the midst of this, Ryo laments that he couldn't find any specific information about Satsuki or Takahisa, but it seems true that the heroes have arrived, just as the legend of the 6 wise gods foretold. Ryo believes that the 3 Japanese people in this house were brought here for that reason, along with Takahisa and Satsuki, who may have come as heroes. In the prophecy, there are 6 heroes, and perhaps those 2 are among them. Seeing that their older brother may be in this world, Aki and Masato express their intention to search for him. Ryo understands their concern, but stresses that they need to learn the language and customs of this world before venturing out. Speaking of leaving, Ryo mentions knowing some trustworthy people, the spirit people, so he thinks they could offer valuable advice. Ayase, feeling tired of everything, only wants to eat, and Ryo agrees that it's time to prepare some food. Miharu offers to help, so Ryo takes the opportunity to announce that they'll be having Japanese food tonight. Watching the two cooks, Masato recalls how Miharu never feels comfortable around men, but she doesn't seem to mind Haruto. Lastly, Celia joins in, eager to learn how to cook, and it doesn't take long for the kitchen team to prepare a wonderful meal. The next day, Haruto bids farewell to his friends who wish him good luck on his journey. Masato promises that by the time Haruto returns, he'll be fluent in Australian, and after receiving this responsibility from their leader, Ayase assures everyone that she will take care of them. Then the protagonist activates his teleportation and leaves. Upon arriving at the spirit village, he runs into Latifa, an old friend who welcomes him with great excitement. Likewise, other friends had sensed a distortion in the nearby magical energy and came to see if it was Ryo's arrival. Alma mentions that Sarah ran ahead to get there first, but Sarah retorts that it was the short one who tried to overtake everyone to be the first. Afterward, Ryo explains that he came to consult with the elders about something, and Sarah promises to inform them immediately. In a meeting with the village leaders, he informs them that the surge of Odd and mana that came from the Straw region could have been the result of the 6 pillars of light he saw, as these pillars were a type of space-time magic that may have been used to summon people from another world. Around Straw, there are rumors that the 6 heroes of the Divine Demon War have appeared, and Ryo believes in this theory because he himself took in 2 girls and a boy who came from outside this world, though he doesn't think they are the exact heroes mentioned, as they were found in a place with no connection to the Pillars of Light. However, they were with 2 other people before being teleported, and they claim to have seen these 2 being taken by a rift in space. In other words, it's possible that this pair was summoned as the heroes, although the 3 Ryo took in may have been involved in this summoning process. Soldier asks if the young man has managed to communicate with beings from another world, and he responds that he knows their language because he lived in that world in his previous life. With that said, the elders take in the information and decide to discuss the matter later, so Ryo takes the opportunity to ask a favor. Ursula promises to do everything in her power to fulfill her companion's wish, so he asks if the 3 he mentioned, along with 1 more person, could stay in the village for a short time, as he needs to find clues on how to send them back to their own world. But it's hard for him to act while having to protect everyone. Besides, it's obvious that Ryo can't compare to the inhabitants of the spirit village in terms of knowledge about space-time magic. Nevertheless, Ursula emphasizes that they have no idea what kind of magic allows beings to cross worlds, while Dominic wants to know who this 4th person Ryo mentioned is. The young man explains that she is a teacher to whom he owes a great deal, and who was forced into a political marriage against her will. Ryo rescued her on the day of the wedding and now cannot simply ignore her situation. Upon hearing this, Dominic laughs heartily and calls Ryo a charmer, but promises to take care of these people. Since neither Ursula nor Seldra objects, Ryo's wish will be granted, but Seldra warns that when these 4 finally return to the Straw region, Ryo must solemnly swear that none of them will reveal any information about the village, as it must remain a secret. With that, Ryo makes the promise and informs them that he will leave tomorrow and bring his friends. That night, the protagonist apologizes to Latifa for having talked about his past life without her permission, but explains that if he hadn't, he wouldn't have been able to explain everything he needed to the elders. Since the topic came up, Latifa asks if she should also talk about her past, but Ryo makes it clear that she doesn't have to feel pressured to tell anyone anything unless she wants to. Curious, she asks if the people who were teleported to this world are Japanese, and when Ryo confirms this, she wonders if he told them that he was also Japanese. The boy replies that he did, as otherwise they would have eventually asked how he understood the language. Downcast, Latifa remembers that this was a secret between the 2 of them and soon becomes irritated when she sees the boy laughing at her behavior. However, he explains that he just found her way of expressing herself adorably funny. Reflecting on it, he tells her that no matter how many others come from Japan besides them, she will always be special to him. He also recalls what he shared about his past life, that he was in love with his childhood friend and that he lived apart from his little sister after their parents divorced. One of the 3 people he took in is the person he loved throughout his life as Amakawa Haruto, and her name is Ayase Miharu. Another one is Sendo Aki, and they lived together for just over 3 years, but she was his younger sister. In any case, he hasn't told these people that he has Haruto's memories because they're likely emotionally unstable after appearing in another world, and now Ryo is no longer Haruto. For that reason, he asks Latifa not to tell him about his past life. In response, Latifa asks him to confess how he really feels about the whole situation, because only then can she make that promise. Ryo reinforces that he wants to keep his past life a secret between him and Latifa. and that while there may come a day when he reveals it to others, for now, he doesn't want that to happen. With that said, he gives his friend a hug. The next day, as Ryo bids farewell, his friends from the village ask when he'll return, and he hopes it'll be in 2 weeks. Latifa rests her head against his chest and asks him to be careful, to which he assures her that everything will be fine before departing for good. Meanwhile, in the capital, Beltrant Lisala had just finished briefing King Francois Gullark on the details of recent events in the capital. Although she had only just arrived, the king requested that she visit Duke Hubina because the sacred stone in the possession of the kingdom of Gullark had summoned a young heroine. For this reason, they planned to invite ambassadors from neighboring kingdoms and hold a celebration to introduce this heroine. In addition to that, Francois wanted to extend an invitation to the heroes summoned by the kingdom of Beltram, and Liselot was tasked with delivering it personally to him, Sakata Hiroki. Liselot found the name strange, so the king explained that in Sakata's homeland it was customary to place the surname first. Somehow, the girl felt a nostalgic sensation upon hearing the name, although she couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Still curious, she asked the king the name of the heroine summoned by the kingdom of Gullark, and Francois revealed it to be Sumeraji Setsuki. Given how she too introduced herself with her family name first, it was likely that she came from the same land as Sakata Hiroki. With that in mind, the king thought it best for Liselot to meet the heroine and had left the envoy waiting in another room. Thus, he asked his daughter, Charlotte, to show her the way. The two made their way to Satsuki's chamber, where she greeted them eagerly, dressed in a splendid suit of armor. As night fell, a hooded man surrounded by revenants observed that the Rika Merchants Guild had a base of operations in the city. Having found a good supply of materials, he ordered his subordinates to locate someone in the nearby Aman forest, someone enveloped in a large amount of magic, and bring them to him alive by sunset the next day. All witnesses were to be killed. With this, the man expected to have all the puppets he needed, deciding to take advantage of this last opportunity to make some money and then lay low for a while. At dawn, Celia was studying Strolling with Masato, who was struggling with the language. However, accustomed to her profession as a teacher, she patiently answered all of his questions with generosity. In the kitchen, while preparing a meal, Miharu wondered if Haruto would return soon, prompting Aki to complain that the girl had been talking about nothing else since the night before. Visibly stressed, the younger girl grumbled that she should be starting a new school term, beginning a new chapter in her life, but both Satsuki and her brother Takahisa had also disappeared, making everything harder. Aki's fear of never seeing her mother or friends again was very real and weighed heavily on her mind. Concerned, Miharu embraced her to offer some comfort. Aki asked if she was also worried, and Miharu admitted she was, but knowing Aki and Masato were there along with the friends she had made in this world made her feel more at ease. Moreover, she emphasized that Haruto was doing everything he could to help their situation, and there wasn't much they could do but trust that he would bring the answers they needed. With that in mind, Aki asked what Miharu thought of Haruto, since she typically didn't feel comfortable around men but seemed to act naturally when he was around. Miharu responded that Haruto was kind and reliable, and that his name reminded her of a childhood friend. Hearing this, Aki became furious, feeling that her friend still thought of that guy and saw it as an offense to Haruto. However, she quickly regained her composure, apologized for losing control, and went outside to cool off. Outside, Aki reflected that Miharu hadn't really done anything wrong, but she still wondered if the girl still loved Amakawa Haruto. Meanwhile, revenants began to approach the area where Ryo's friends were staying, which instantly alerted Aisha. Miharu came to talk to Aki, but the two noticed the approaching monsters. With unreal speed, a revenant lunged at the two humans but was stopped by Aisha's power, causing a shockwave that rattled the entire house, worrying Masato and Celia. The teacher told the boy to stay inside while she prepared to go out. Aisha surmised that these monsters had been drawn to the area by the magic of the barrier. Recalling Ryo's mission to protect the people in the house, she took full responsibility and resolved not to falter. Soon, another monster attacked her but was repelled by her power. However, a third undead creature managed to sneak up on the Japanese girls from behind. Celia arrived just in time to help, as Aisha couldn't manage on her own. The teacher summoned his shield to protect Miharu and Aki, while Aisha took charge of the remaining monsters. Ryo then arrived and joined in the defense of the house. He wanted to know if Aisha knew anything about these creatures, but she could only sense a similar monster-like energy from them and deduced that the darker one was the strongest. With that, Ryo said he would take on the darker one, leaving the rest to her. The strongest monster attempted to flee, but Ryo quickly cornered it, dodging its attacks. Based on his analysis, the monster was fast but always moved in straight lines. After knocking it to the ground and plunging his sword into its back, Ryo noted that its life force was unusually strong and found it strange how its mouth moved before it died. Shortly after, the most powerful revenant dropped a magic stone, confirming that it was indeed a monster. Meanwhile, Ishia had defeated the other two that had accompanied it. With that done, Ryo thanks Celia for her help, but he couldn't shake the image of the monster moving its mouth as if it had been pleading to be killed. Aki apologized, believing the whole ordeal was her fault for leaving the house, while Miharu took responsibility for saying something that had upset her friend. Unmoved by the emotional scene, Ryo casually commented that the food smelled delicious, lightening the mood once again. Everyone decided it was a good time for lunch, but before they sat down to eat, Ryo warned them that they would soon need to relocate. Meanwhile, amidst dozens of corpses of human puppets, the hooded man noted the absence of a group of revenants that hadn't returned, and so he planned to create more puppets to make up for his loss. Meanwhile, in the spirit village, Latifa talks to herself about Ryo, soon the person he loved in his past life, as well as his little sister from that past life, and the teacher, to whom he owes a debt in this life, will come to this village. Ryo mentioned that she doesn't have to tell these people about herself, but knowing that they are important to the boy, Latifa considers being honest with them. Then Ryo's group arrives at the spirit village, and everyone is amazed by the speed of the teleportation and the beauty of the place they have reached. Latifa and her friends welcome the newcomers. The humans are struck by the appearance of the beast people, while the local inhabitants bow to Aisha after a long time without seeing her. Given this, Masato asks if Aisha is significant to these people, and Ryo explains that the spirit people regard the highest class of spirits that can materialize and take human form as divine. Upon hearing this, Miharu apologizes for treating the spirits so informally, but Aisha herself requests not to be treated formally. Meanwhile, Celia Claire introduces herself to Latifa after learning she is Ryo's younger sister and apologizes for her boldness, but she would love to touch the Beast Girl's tail and makes her request directly. As the Beast Girl agrees, the teacher wastes no time in fulfilling her wish. Aki comments that Celia seems to like furry things, so Latifa smiles and responds that this place might be heaven for her. Upon hearing this, the newcomers are surprised that this inhabitant spoke Japanese, so Latifa explains that, like Ryo, she has memories of her past life, which is why she offers to teach Straliano to the visitors. Ryo asks if the young Beast Girl is sure about this, and she replies that she had already decided this, and that her friends and the elders are aware of her decision. She made this decision knowing what it's like to feel insecure because you came from another world, and this would be a way to make the envoys feel more comfortable in a place they've never been before. Reminded of her challenging childhood in Straw, where she had serious difficulties adapting initially, Latifa highlights that she is Ryo's little sister and will always help when she can. Thus, Ryo thanks his sister for her efforts and admits that he is happy, which also delights the Beast Girl. Soon, the other inhabitants approach the humans and announce that they will help everyone get accustomed to village life. The one with white hair introduces herself as Sarah, while the green-haired one is Orphea and the redhead is Alma. All are very pleased to meet the visitors. Likewise, Aki states his name and his brothers, and Miharu introduces herself last. Upon hearing her name, Latifa realizes that this is the girl Ryo was in love with. Then, everyone is led to the village, where the people are waiting to receive the humans. However, Aki observes that the local inhabitants seem to be afraid of them, so Ryo explains that the people of this village usually keep their distance from humans, although there is quite a bit of curiosity about this race. A young beast girl approaches and touches Naru, who kneels to say, "Hi." The little girl then whispers something in Latifa's ear, who explains that the little one found the human's uniform quite different. Miharu worries about looking strange as she dressed more formally to be received by the elders, but Latifa tells her that the little girl loved her outfit. Reassured, the human comments that the child's ears are very cute, prompting her to smile and run back to her mother. Without delay, the beast people approach the strangers to establish initial contact, and indeed they create an instant connection with them, demonstrating their receptiveness. Amidst all this, Miharu notices that Latifa was looking at her face in a somewhat impressed manner, making the beast girl embarrassed upon realizing that she might have overstepped. Still embarrassed, she asks if she can call the human Miharu, and upon getting confirmation, soon Aki and Masato join the conversation to better mingle. Then the newly arrived humans are taken to a genuine feast displayed by the people. Masato cannot hide his excitement about the amount of food, although his sister asks him to show a bit more decorum. However, Latifa makes it clear that there's no need to worry about formalities at this welcome party. Shortly after, the elders arrive to meet the visitors. Silver states that Ishi's presence makes the spirit people very happy. Dominic gets too close to the children to observe, so Ursula asks her companion not to scare the kids with that stern face. With that said, everyone bursts into laughter. At that moment, Dryas expresses joy at the arrival of Ryo and Aisha, and all the village residents are enchanted with the presence of the entity. Until nightfall, residents and visitors continue drinking, eating, and celebrating this wonderful meeting. To Masato's surprise, the locals prepared a batch of inarazushi, so he calls his sister to come eat. Aki can't believe that they prepared this dish typical of Japanese cuisine, but Latifa explains that she cooked this portion personally so that the Japanese would feel more at home. Thus, they gather at a table to relive the taste of this food while Latifa observes Ryo being well treated by everyone. About this, Aki highlights that everyone really likes Haruto, and that he is a great older brother, and Latifa responds that she is proud to call him her big brother. With that, Aki bows her head and confesses that she feels envious. Internally, she reflects that she also wants to see her brother soon and wonders where he could be at that moment. After pondering this, she assures Latifa that she will study the language of this world very well. After the party, humans are taken to their new home while they stay in the village, and everyone is amazed at the size of that residence. The Beast Women explain that they can use the outdoor bath and then rest well, and Misato gets excited about this bath. However, he ends up being left out after losing at rock, paper, scissors, while all the girls join in the water. With that, Masato regrets not having asked Haruto to play in his place, for surely the guy would have won. Ryo isn't so sure about that, so the child wants to put what he's saying to the test by challenging him to a round. However, he chose rock while Ryo chose scissors. In the bath, Miharu gazes at the stars visible in the sky, while Aki acknowledges that they have indeed arrived in a remarkable place but fears they may never return home. At that moment, Miharu even replies that they will return someday, but Aki's words instantly dampen the mood. Masato wants to know why Haruto is so strong no matter the situation, but the elder explains it's not quite like that. While having a brief flashback, he states he has something he must do, but to succeed, he needs to become stronger. Hearing this, Masato confesses he also needs to get stronger to protect Miharu and Aki. At that moment, Latifa arrives and announces that the bath is ready, and then Ryo calls the little boy to join him. Celia finds a letter on the table upon returning from the water. The next morning, she finds Ryo training with his sword in the forest and takes the opportunity to apologize for making her wait so long, but at least his friends are quickly getting used to the village. Therefore, he announces he will deliver the letter to Celia's parents. Moved, the teacher asks if the young man isn't overburdened as he is working hard to return Miharu and the others to their world of origin. Moreover, he had intended to erect a tombstone for his parents, but having to save Celia seems to have delayed all his plans. For this reason, she says Ryo no longer needs to do anything for her. Regarding this, the man admits he has things to do, but affirms that the teacher is not hindering him at all, as at that moment all he wanted was to save her, just as he deeply wishes to send the three back home. Then, after delivering Celia's letter, he plans to go to Rodania to gather information about the heroes. With that, Celia thanks him and asks to be notified if her friend needs anything. After all, she still has the most mana of any mage in the kingdom of Beltrum. No matter what happens, she will always stand by Ryo. After this conversation, she stores her letter and prepares for the journey alongside Ryo and Asia. The Beast Girls gather to bid farewell to their friends and assure that they will take care of the humans who stayed. Indeed, Miharu has a gift for the travelers, a basket filled with food to nourish them during their journey. Ryo comments that it must have been a lot of work to prepare all this food, but she insists that it's the least she can do in light of everything the young man has done to help them, and that one day she will repay this debt of gratitude. Then Ryo states that this food is more than enough. Sarah and Alma add fuel to the fire, highlighting that Miharu went to great lengths to prepare all this food as if she were a good wife, while Masato ensures he will work hard while Ryo is away. With that said, the trio embarks on their journey while Latifa expresses her desire to make the humans fluent in Stralianum to surprise Ryo, Ishia, and Celia. Meanwhile, in Rodania, Liselot asks Takata Hiroki to attend the Kingdom of Galark's party. While listening to her, Hiroki notes that everything about this girl is extremely beautiful, whether her appearance or even her voice. Moreover, he knows that Flora and Rona are already at a high level, but this situation with a noble girl from a neighboring kingdom caught the hero off guard, as after everything that happened, he feels that the main character has finally appeared. Thus, he crosses his arms and states that he will attend the party but wants to know if Liselot will be there. As she confirms that's the plan, he reaffirms his presence, and she expresses her excitement to see the hero of Beltrum there and leaves Hiroki head over heels in love. As night falls, Asia and the others arrive in Clea, the capital of the lands of Count Clare, where Celia was born and raised. According to her, there is a secret passage in the garden that connects to the main house, and as only her family knows about it, Celia plans to leave the letter there and return. Deciding this, they venture into the mansion's garden and try to stay out of the guard's sight. To avoid being seen, Ryo announces they should use spiritual arts to hide from that point forward, a task Ishii takes on. Having done so, they reach the fountain in the center of the garden, where Celia opens the entrance to the secret passage before the guards could appear. Next, they reach the underground passage and Celia picks up a lantern that emits a green glow. At the same time, a sphere glows in the same color in the office of Roland Clare, Celia's father and the Count of the region. At that moment, he opens the passage from inside his office, surprised that someone outside had entered. There, the girl leaves the letter on a desk while her father shouts her name, imagining it could be her. Nearly crying, she tries to move forward despite the overwhelming emotion. In the letter, she apologizes to her parents for causing so much worry, but asks them to stay calm as she is currently living a peaceful life alongside people she trusts. She knows she disappointed her parents by abandoning her marriage to the Duke Arbor family, but made it clear that she's well and will one day return to Clea to explain everything. But until then, she wishes her parents to take care of their health. In the end, she thanks them for their unwavering love. After reading the letter, as Rio and the others are about to leave the mansion, Roland rushes outside and shouts for Celia. With no hope of finding her at that moment, he reflects that the girl hasn't disappointed him and promises that one day he will see his beloved daughter again. Away from there, Rio asks if Celia really doesn't want to see her father, and she explains that it's better this way for now. In any case, the boy assures that one day they will return and everything will be alright. So the girl wipes away her tears and believes that it really will happen. The next day in the morning, a dragon soared through the skies over Nor, the territory of Ducretia. Nearby, aboard a vessel, the captain realized that flying to a man could be dangerous, so he decided to make an emergency landing. Lissalot commended the officer's wise decision, and he felt honored by her words. Meanwhile, Arya drew the nanny's attention to what seemed to be the enchanted dirigible of the Duke Huguenot's family. Soon after, in addition to the Duke, the crew was greeted by Baronet Boxa and the hero Sakata Hiroki, who inquired whether Lissalot had met the hero of Beltram. She confirmed she had, and had also successfully delivered an invitation to their hero as well. Setting that aside, she wanted to know why all these people were gathered here. Hiroki explained that Huguenot had business in Galark and was stopping in Amand. Hence, the hero accompanied him. But they encountered a dragon in the sky. Huguenot informed them that a meeting was necessary to share information and discuss the next steps, and he asked Baronet Boxa to provide a place. Boxa offered his own mansion, although he thought it wasn't very large. Meanwhile, with his group, Rio was impressed by the lands of Marcus Rodan, and although his lord had been banished from the royal capital, he found this place quite bustling. After a brief distraction, the boy and Tanya lost sight of Asia, only to find her at a market stall, eating something. Embarrassed, Rio asked how much he owed the vendor, but the man informed him that the girl's meal was covered by the man passed out at that table, as he had worked to prepare the ship for the hero and had received a good salary for it. Wanting to share his luck, Rio questioned this, so the merchant explained that the man at the table had told something about the heroes summoned to this town and invited to some kind of presentation party. Tanya wanted to know where the hero's ship was heading, so the man revealed that they had left today with the princess and her people for Galark. That night, at the meeting in Nor, Lissalot told Hiroki that a dragon was something humans still weren't prepared to handle. So much so that, in the worst case, they might have to abandon the city and evacuate the citizens. Regarding the citizens of Nor, the baronet assured that they were in good hands under his care, so the woman thanked him for his efforts. Then she asked Huguenot what he thought about all this, but the duke seemed confused. With that, Hiroki questioned what Lissalot planned to do, and she said her intention was to return to Amand, having left a representative in her place and meeting to resume her duties as the city's governor. Hiroki pointed out that flying with a dirigible would provoke the dragon, but that was precisely why she intended to return by land, and if they left tomorrow morning, they should arrive while it was still light. The hero found it absurd that only Lissalot and her servants should travel alone, and she assured him her servants were trained in martial arts and could handle themselves. Attentive to the conversation, Rona asked the young man not to delve into others' personal matters so as not to embarrass them. Then he conceded and assured he understood the situation, but he would like to accompany Lissalot since he was a hero and couldn't ignore the situation. Huguenot supported Hiroki's decision because of his status in the kingdom, noting that not even the Duke himself was qualified to give orders to such a prestigious individual. Nevertheless, Lissalot emphasized that Hiroki was a hero from her country and should not be exposed because of her. But the young man insisted he was acting as he should, having sworn to protect the Duke and his allies. In other words, the Duke assured that Lissalot wouldn't be his responsibility should anything happen. That said, he asked what Flora thought, and she agreed, as they couldn't leave Hiroki there alone. Finally, Hiroki assured their trip to Amand would not pose any problem, but if it did, it would be then that they would need him more than ever. To show he wasn't joking, he materialized his sign of a hero, his divine weapon, Yamada no Orochi, a name he himself had given to his personal weapon. The next day, at the edge of the convoy setting off for the journey, a warrior was surprised to see Aria, the governess, and announced that he had been appointed to ensure the traveler's safety. His name was Raymond Brandt, captain under the command of Duke Huguenot. After introducing himself, the knight lamented what had happened to Aria's family, and the woman thanked him for his kindness, although she assured that she had been very well received by Liselot. Amid this, Huguenot announced that the hero had arrived, so it was time to depart. Thus, the group set off towards Amand. After stretching, Hiroki commented that riding in a carriage wasn't bad once in a while, but Rona warned that the hero should not let his guard down. Liselot mentioned to Flora that she didn't seem used to riding in a carriage on rough roads, so it would be good if she warned them if she fell ill. But the girl with purple hair explained that she was just not much for talking and found listening to people talking more relaxing. Even so, Liselot apologized if she was being intrusive, but she really would like to chat with the girl as there were many things she wanted to know about her. Happily, Flora showed herself willing to talk, then Hiroki interjected and asked them not to forget to include him. However, Aria ordered the carriage to stop due to the presence of a monster and commanded the fighters to form battle formations. Then another servant of Liselot activated a lever in the vehicle that triggered a defense system, isolating the passengers inside. Looking around, the soldiers couldn't see the monsters, so Aria alerted that there was an absurd number of them hidden in the forest. Even finding it strange that these creatures had appeared so suddenly, she ordered the warriors to raise their shields to protect themselves from a hail of stones thrown by the enemies, while she and the other servants conjured a magical barrier to avoid being hit. Raymond ordered that the wounded be brought near the carriage and asked Duke Huguenot not to leave the inside. Aria asked the captain to place the defense in front with her, while a soldier informed the officer that there were monsters on the road behind them. With that, hundreds of enemies began to appear non-stop. Aria then asked Liselot to stay safe in the carriage as it should withstand some thrown rocks. Next, she told the maids that she would take out the enemies ahead, and once she started her attack, her comrades should reduce their barriers and advance individually. Following that, she ordered the knights to maintain the defense. After setting the strategy, Aria, the governess, cast the magic cannon against the monsters, destroying many of them. She then charged at high speed into the endless hordes, continuing to eliminate numerous opponents. Observing this, her companions realized why she's not called the head-cutting princess for nothing. The second-in-command ordered 4 partners to take care of the other side of the conflict, while she, Natalie, and Chloe handled this part. Speaking directly to Chloe, she instructed the warrior to stay behind the knights and take down the weaker monsters using the foot and bullet, being careful not to hit their allies. Then the leader joined Natalie to attack after they activated their physical enchantment skill. Watching the conflict from the sky, a mysterious man reflected that this skilled maid must be Liselot Krisha's right hand. Besides, he noticed that the defense on both sides was quite strong, and that Liselot's subordinates were very capable, yet they still had weaknesses that needed to be exploited. Meanwhile, Hiroki and the others inside were unsure how to react. Anxious, the hero started to show greater concern, so Liselot tried to calm the boy by saying that everything was fine, since those outside were professional warriors. Hiroki pointed out that even with so many professional warriors, they hadn't been able to resolve the situation quickly. Flora asked the boy to trust everyone more, although he seemed reluctant to do so because he did not know these soldiers. Hearing this, Flora lost her calm and also showed distress. So Liselot approached, held her hand, and confessed that she too was feeling scared, although she was ashamed to admit it. Anyway, she asked if it was okay to hold the girl's hands, and Flora responded affirmatively. Taking advantage of the ruler of Amanda's strategy, Hiroki also held Rona's hand and assured her that he would protect her with his Yamada no Orochi, and the girl reacted by hugging the hero. However, something extremely heavy fell in the carriage, causing it to shake violently. At that moment, Hiroki reached his limit and summoned his weapon to fight outside, taking Rona with him. Flora commented that she and Liselot should follow the hero, but her colleague asked her to wait inside while she checked the situation. Upon leaving, she invoked her magical barrier and assessed the immense horde that was hidden in the forest. Doing so, Liselot pulled Flora and rejoined Hiroki and Rona. The boy displayed an unusual anxiety and emphasized that this world was terrible, as a hero with cheating abilities should be the central element of any battle. Amidst this, Liselot asked Rona to take care of Flora, as she needed to use her magic to take care of the wounded. Right after her speech, Liselot departed, leaving Hiroki worried this might be one of those stressful plot twists that every story has. Without delay, the girl began to heal the wounded until Aria arrived and reported that her forces were being pressured to defend on both fronts and the rear. Aria took care of the front line and was heading to the rear, while the rest of the maids were protecting the other sides. Thus, Liselot said she relied on her partner, and the maid returned to battle. Meanwhile, the hooded man saw that Arya had gone to the rear and thought his distraction was a success, so he began to descend from the sky. Handling her sword with unstoppable efficiency, Arya, the governess, decimated the opposing forces, leaving Raymond Brant stunned. She then returned to the officer and announced that she would take care of the monsters in this area, asking for his support on the flanks and front. However, a new element entered the battlefield and promised to turn the tide in favor of the monsters. Rona remembered well that it was a Minotaur, a legendary fierce monster from the Divine Demon War. Immediately, Hiroki thought this was the end for the humans as the gigantic creature approached Liselot. To protect her master, Arya sped up her movements against the monsters in front of her and managed to draw the Minotaur's attention. Although the beast still had the freedom to demonstrate its strength by tossing the carriage away as if it were made of paper, then it stretched its hand to crush Flora, but Liselot saved her just in time. At that moment, Rio emerged like a shadow and cut off the Minotaur's hand. When the beast's sword was thrown into the air, the humans stepped on it until the blade pierced the creature's back. After the victory, the boy announced that he came to help. Then Flora recalled when she needed his help for the first time she encountered a terrible Minotaur. Subsequently, another Minotaur appeared on the battlefield and Rio raised his enchanted sword and charged at it. Blocking the monster's blow, a hurricane formed around the human's blade, repelling the adversary with implacable fury, dragging it several meters through the forest trees. Still, the Minotaur returned to the fight with twice the hatred, forcing Rio to dodge a lethal blow. However, without any difficulty, the human applied a technique that cut the monster multiple times, finishing it off instantly. With that, the soldiers shouted in celebration of Rio's decisive arrival in the war, while the rest of the monsters retreated with the death of the strongest element of their army. After sheathing his sword and turning to the other allies, Rio noticed the presence of Flora, who, like him, could not contain the emotion of an unexpected reunion. Meanwhile, Liselot Krejci expresses her gratitude for being saved during such a difficult time and introduces herself as the ruler of Amand. Additionally, she presents the second princess of Beltram and the current head of the House of Duke Huguenot, Gustave. Noticing Flora behaving strangely, Liselot inquires what's wrong, while Rio wonders if he has committed some discourtesy. Summoning her courage, Flora asks if she and the boy have met before, but he believes they have not. Surprised by this, given that Flora thinks she recognizes the young man, Gustave asks if he is a noble from another land. However, Rio explains that he is merely a wanderer traveling from place to place, practicing fencing, and not the sort who would expect an audience with royalty. Gustave is pleased to find a swordsman of such talent unaffiliated with any nation and hidden in this territory. At this moment, Chloe and the other maids immediately recognize Haruto. Chloe is delighted and remarks that she was the one who assisted him at the Rika Guild while he was shopping. He even visited the main store in Amand and was served by her. Liselot is surprised to have such a swordsman as a customer in her shop, so she bows to thank him, a gesture echoed by her maids. In the midst of this, Hiroki Sakata arrives and introduces himself as a hero in a rather conceited manner. Hearing the young man's name, Rio wonders if he too is Japanese, but without voicing this doubt, he simply comments that Hiroki is the hero he has heard rumors about and is pleased to meet a true hero. Even more convinced of his own importance, Hiroki responds that Haruto seems a quite formidable swordsman. Haruto is honored by these words and admits he is embarrassed by all the attention. Liselot finds it curious that a man capable of defeating a Minotaur is embarrassed by their remarks, while Hiroki cuts the conversation short to announce that there is nothing more to be done there and thus calls Flora and Rona to return to the remaining carriage to resume their journey. Surprised that the boy can speak the language of Strahl, Rio wonders if this is some kind of special hero ability. Lastly, Flora is called again to board the carriage, but being distracted by watching the young man she swore she knew, the girl is slow to respond. Regarding this, Rio sees no issue in Rona knowing who he is, but the second princess of Beltram is a different matter. Either way, there isn't much he can do about it. On the other hand, he has met Liselot Krejci, one of the most influential nobles of Galark. With this in mind, the protagonist offers to retrieve the carriage lost in the battle, which was flung far by the Minotaur. Liselot suggests to Arya that it might be interesting to check the condition of the vehicle. Then Rio is surprised to find out that the blonde was Arya. Not long ago, he and his group were traveling to Amand until they spotted the battle taking place on the ground. Celia recognizes Arya from the air and remarks that she is a friend of hers from their academy days. Aisha notes that this woman is wearing a uniform from the Rika Guild, and Celia adds that she heard she serves the daughter of Duke Krejci's house. In the midst of the conversation, Aisha senses the presence of a powerful monster, and the rest is history. Now facing the overturned carriage, Rio cuts part of it and is praised by Liselot. She emphasizes that the man was able to control the wind with this enchanted weapon and presumes it belongs to the class of ancient artifacts. Rio confirms, but internally he adds that in fact he is using spiritual arts. Later, the maids gather before serving drinks for the celebration, and Cosette jokes that Chloe doesn't deserve to meet such a handsome young man, so she asks to be introduced to him. Nathalie complains that Cosette is putting the girl in a difficult situation. Then Cosette remarks that the girl hasn't found a boyfriend yet because she is so naive. Nathalie is offended and replies that she sees no advantage in being like her colleague until Lissalot arrives to end the argument and asks the ladies to get back to work. Soon, the drinks are duly served to the heroes and heroines who had won the arduous battle against the monsters that dared cross their path. Aria informs her boss that the carriage is ready, so the ruler goes to the vehicle and thanks Rio for having the brilliant idea that saved this means of transport. Cosette comes offering a fruit-flavored water to the country's savior, claiming to have made an especially sweeter mix in the hope that it might relieve fatigue. Rio graciously accepts the cup as the maid formally introduces herself as a servant of Lissalot. The surrounding girls glance at the situation as if the girl was flirting with the young man, but they leave it be for now. With the young lady's departure, Rio comments that all who serve Lissalot seem very reserved. Hearing this, the ruler lets out a muffled laugh and thanks him for the kind words. Meanwhile, Gustav only wants to know how to remove the gigantic sword of the Minotaur from the middle of the road. Then Hiroki asks everyone to step back and approaches the weapon to supposedly handle the situation. Soon, with his usual conceited expression, he lifts the blade with his own hands using sheer brute force, leaving the soldiers dumbfounded, then isolates it and makes everyone celebrate as if he had scored an Olympic goal. After this feat, the young man walks through the ecstatic crowd and stops in front of Haruto to flash a cocky smile at him, visibly embarrassing the bystander who had nothing to do with the matter. Then it's time to depart, and inside the carriage, Rio questions whether it really is alright for him to join the convoy. Gustav responds that he was responsible for saving everyone, therefore it is an honor to carry the young man wherever he wishes to go. Speaking of which, when they arrive in Amand, Lissalot would like to formally thank the savior and bows before Rio. Embarrassed, the boy asks the girl not to bow her head, and Hiroki agrees because someone important like the ruler should not bow so easily to others. Flustered, Lissalot apologizes. Having said that, Hiroki grants permission for Haruto to accompany the journey since he demonstrated at least a minimum of good manners. As always, Rio simply feels honored by the opportunity. Meanwhile, Latifa is teaching the Japanese how to speak Stralian. After today's lesson, she praises how quickly her students are learning, and Masato shows great enthusiasm for his progress, even calling himself a true prodigy. Aki deflates her brother's excitement and credits their excellent teacher. When Masato was called away to fish, he doesn't hesitate to leave the table. His sister asks about his spiritual arts training, but the boy wants nothing more than to play and is already neglecting his duties. In good spirits, Miharu comments that thanks to magical artifacts, he can keep up with the beast children and is having so much fun he can barely contain himself. In response, Latifa adds that using a magical item will also serve as spiritual arts training, but aside from Masato, she announces that the two female students should work harder at their training. Later, they train alongside Orphea, who is tutoring them in this activity. In an attempt to summon a water sphere, Miharu does well and controls the element for a reasonable time, but Aki struggles seriously with the task and thinks something is wrong with her, perhaps a lack of talent. At that, Orphea ends today's training and calls the students for tea, but Aki decides to take a walk instead. After a brief walk, she finds two beast children pretending an empty pot is full of food, which reminds her of a childhood event where she, Haruto, and Miharu played the same game. Back then, the boy promised they would always be together to play, but one day he was taken away, leaving the little girl in despair as he had promised he would never leave. Walking around, Latifa notices that Aki is looking downcast and calls her to come back home. Back at home, the girls serve a feast on the table while Sarah comments that Masato is taking a long time to return. Seizing the topic, Aki jokes that her brother was so scared when he arrived, but now he has loosened up. Miharu understands the boys' perspective as everything was so new to them there. Speaking of which, Aki asks Latifa how she and Haruto adjusted to this place, to which she replies that it was difficult initially. Orphea emphasizes that she acted unforgivably back then, while Sarah mentions that long ago, Rio was camped near the village barrier that keeps humans away. When they approached to see what was going on, they found Latifa there and put her to sleep using spiritual arts. They thought Rio had kidnapped a village child and detained him under that suspicion. However, Rio used spiritual arts on Latifa to help her as she often had nightmares. When they realized their mistake, Alma says they rushed to help Rio, reminding the girl that the boy always said something in his sleep. Remembering it clearly, Orphea thinks he said Mi-chan, which makes Aki feel downcast upon hearing those words. Just then, Masato arrives with a huge fish for dinner, but the creature was so large it jumped from his hand onto the table, causing chaos. After dinner, Miharu practices her spiritual arts until the beast children from the village come to talk about Aki. Meanwhile, Akibe is in the hot springs with Latifa and asked her friend what she and Haruto did before coming to the village. Latifa reveals she was a slave to a noble in Beltram, but Rio freed her and brought her to the village. Despite the difficulties, the Beast Girl feels honored to have had the opportunity to meet Rio, which is why she wants to help him in any way she can. Aki understands how her friend feels, as when she was little, she was betrayed by someone she loved. Since then, the girl has become sad and lonely, but one day her mother remarried, and she gained an older and a younger brother, Takahisa and Masato. The older brother was very kind and helped his little sister with all kinds of things, which is why she also feels that she must help him in any way she can. But instead, Aki gets frustrated because she is not good with spiritual arts and starts feeling bad about the things she remembers from the past. Sometimes, the girl feels that all she does is get annoyed with Masato. With this, Latifa suspects that Aki feels her heart and mind are already at their limit, but emphasizes that the girl had to learn a lot in her new lifestyle, which is very difficult, and if she is suffering, she can always confide in the Beast Girl as they are great friends. The next day, Aki leaves early to practice, and despite showing low performance, she is not discouraged. Upon returning home, Orphea greets the human dressed in a school uniform because, according to her, she wanted to wear something special to serve a special breakfast. Soon, Aki sees that Miharu has brought an apple pie and is delighted with the decision of her friends as she loves this pie. Honestly, she doesn't understand why the girls would do something so special suddenly, so they tell her they took advantage of Aki's morning training outing and followed Miharu's recipe. Soon, everyone gathers to eat the pie. Aki falls in love with the taste and is sure that Masato will be very happy when he wakes up, so they all have the idea to make another pie for Haruto too. As Latifa wanted the boy to see her wearing a uniform, Aki lends hers to the Beast Girl, who dresses in the outfit and feels great in it. At night in the Proxia Empire at the imperial capital of Midgard, Emperor Middle Proxia is approached by a man named Lucius, who informs him that something problematic has happened in the kingdom of Beltram and that it would be very bad for Duke Arbor to collapse now. Nido responds that he sent him as an ambassador as a sign of friendship because nothing would be resolved with an internal conflict. Speaking of the man, Arbor appears and informs Lucius that he intends to put his plan into action but has a problem ahead, a problem that not even a Minotaur can handle. Therefore, Lucius must capture Flora Beltram. Soon, the group from Rio finally arrives in the city of Amand. Upon being left in the care of the ruler's maids, Rio is informed by Liselot that a messenger will be sent to him tomorrow morning. With that, the leader departs and her maid announces she will take Rio to his lodging. As they enter the inn, Rio encounters Celia and Asia. Concerned, Celia approaches, embraces her companion, and asks if he is alright. He assures her that he was not injured at any point. Due to the manner in which the girl approached the boy, he mentions that everyone around is paying close attention to them. Embarrassed, the girl pulls her friend to the table. During the meal, he remarks that Liselot has arranged a place for them to stay, so they will be in Amand for the next few days. Celia expresses concern about Aria's involvement, but Rio thinks that Celia, posing as Cecilia, gives off a very different impression, so everything should be fine. What worries him is the fact that the royal family is traveling with nobles associated with the kingdom of Beltram. More specifically, he's referring to Flora, Duke Huguenot, and Rona. Intrigued, Celia wants to know if Flora and Rona know Rio well. Fearing he might have noticed something amiss, he replies that Flora has sharp instincts and noticed something strange like him changing his hair color, but it should be no issue. Still, Celia thinks it would be better if they left Amand. However, even though he knows there's a risk in staying, Rio wants to build a friendly relationship with Liselot. Since the hero from the kingdom of Gellerk might be someone he was looking for, establishing a connection with someone powerful in this country would be great. On this matter, Celia acknowledges that Liselot is famous for being very shrewd. Therefore, she supports the group leader's decision and makes it clear she will do whatever is possible to help. Taking advantage of the girl's offer of assistance, the young man mentions he will visit Liselot tomorrow. Therefore, he would like his friend to teach him the proper manners for visiting a noble's house. At night, Duke Gustav Huguenot tells Liselot that Aria did an extraordinary job in battle. Even though she's grateful for the compliment, the girl doesn't understand why it wasn't the hero of Beltram who resolved the situation. The Duke acknowledges this, although he thinks that boy lacks enough experience for it. Still, she mentions that Hiroki was strong enough to lift the great Minotaur's sword. Therefore, she presumes that this strength comes from his divine weapon. Gustav thinks this is likely and adds that this power can only be used if there's an affinity, just as it works with enchanted swords. They say the affinity with divine weapons depends solely on the heroes. Honestly, Gustav thinks the fact that Hiroki can use this strength without training raises many doubts. As a hero is someone very important, the noble fears putting him in unnecessary danger. For this reason, he thinks it would be premature to send Hiroki into battle just to gain experience. Thus, he is kept in only in simulated duels with the kingdom's knights. Regarding this, Liselot thinks the young hero's first combat experience turned out to be much more traumatic than could have been imagined. But Gustav thinks they can turn this into a positive thing, considering that Hiroki, despite the odds, gained experience in this conflict. Hearing this, the ruler of Amand discovers what she already suspected. Duke Huguenot sees the hero of Beltra merely as a symbol of power. Anyway, the man reports that if Haruto hadn't appeared, everyone would have been massacred. For he killed 3 minotaurs without any problem and saved the day. In Gustav's mind, this is impossible unless the person has incredible control over the enchanted sword they are using, and it's extremely rare to find a swordsman with such an immense level of power. In Liselot's opinion, Haruto shows not only skill with the sword but also in demeanor and words. Therefore, she thinks he might be hiding his identity or could be from a fallen noble house. Because of this, Gustav has a great interest in getting to know Haruto better to build a relationship with him in the future. With that intention, the noble invites the man to attend a meeting with the young man tomorrow. As a token of gratitude, Gustav offers his knights for Liselot to investigate the cause of the monster's emergence, as having more personnel available to explore the forest may be crucial for the success of this mission. The woman thanks him for the help, especially because recent reports say that more adventurers have been disappearing in the area. Meanwhile, on the streets of Man, 2 nobles take their ladies to a very expensive restaurant in the city. The girls think the prices of the dishes are too high, but the boys flash their credentials, questioning whether the women know who they are. The women respond that they are indeed nobles. Then the 2 burst into laughter. Alphonse the blonde tells his friend he's in a good mood, while Stuart replies that this good moment will erase the events of this afternoon. Alphonse complains that the buddy shouldn't talk about it and grumbles that the Haruto guy just appeared out of nowhere like that. Besides that, Hiro Hiroki accused the 2 of having hidden from the battle. Stuart is outraged because this is not just a lie, but also because the hero himself was showing terror in the face of war and yet treats the knights as if they were weak and insignificant. Tired of hearing about that guy, Alphonse just wants another drink. However, upon arriving at the restaurant, the duo stirs up trouble at the reception, wanting to use the hall with a garden view, but other customers are already using it. Meanwhile, in that very hall, Rio, Celia, and Asia are chatting away until the disgruntled duo hastily climbs the stairs even over the protests of the staff and bursts into the customer's room. A waiter steps forward and apologizes for the men's behavior. Then Rio asks for an explanation. Surprised to see who is inside, Stuart introduces himself as a member of the Huguenot family, while asserting that Alphonse belongs to the Rodin family and that the 2 are knights affiliated with the group that Rio helped today. When reminded of the pair, Rio apologizes for not recognizing them and asks what brought them there. Without mincing words, Alphonse makes it clear he intends to use the room, so the protagonist informs them he has finished eating and the boys may enter. However, as Celia and Asia were about to leave, the noble prevents them and invites the 2 to join for dinner. Rio steps up and explains they are already satisfied. The noble acts as if it's outrageous that anyone would refuse his invitation and remarks that the boy before him is merely a commoner. At that moment, a waiter warns that he will have to intervene if Alphonse and his friend continue to bother other customers. However, the boy persists in his error and claims Rio doesn't know how to treat nobility. Therefore, he threatens to chastise the commoner for rudeness. Rio, however, clarifies that national and regional laws limit the punishment for discourtesy. This insight completely drains Alphonse's patience, who lashes out, trying to attack the customer. Rio swiftly counters with an arm lock that pins the rich boy to the floor. Stuart doesn't let it go and charges at Rio, and soon his friend gets up to join the fight, but they both get soundly thrashed. Before long, the news of the fight reaches Liselot's ears. In her attempt to prove to Haruto that the nobles aren't arrogant, she couldn't have anticipated a worse fight than this. Because of the incident, she decides to apologize to him the following morning. Gustav appears to ask her to convey his apologies to the boy as well. After all, as his surname suggests, Stuart is also a Huguenot. The Duke then scolds the 2 young men and reminds them not to expect a second chance. Therefore, he decides to disown the pair. Alphonse argues that this is an overreaction, considering it was just a fight with a commoner. However, the Duke states that the boy is helpful, unlike Alphonse, who is useless. Furious, even in the presence of a ducal member, the boy asks him to take back his words. Gustav then argues that Haruto fought against 3 minotaurs, something neither of the 2 present could do, and that Alphonse and Stuart were soundly beaten, even though they ganged up on the adversary. However, the Duke decides to give the boys a chance to clear their names. Considering that Liselot will investigate the forest to the west of Amand, Gustav wants the youths to stand out in some way as part of the advance group of this investigation. Thus, the Duke himself might speak well of the duo and gloss over this debacle they cause. But if they fail, Alphonse will have to remain confined in Rodania. This offer will stand only if the two bullies apologize to Haruto. The next day, speaking of apologies, Ryo feels guilty about the confusion the previous day. Because of his concern, he asks Celia to stay in the stone house with Ayase from today on. However, the girl makes it clear she doesn't want to leave her friend's side. Realizing that her statement might have sounded romantic, she clarifies that she is just concerned about her comrade. Lastly, Ayase comments that if the time comes, it might simply run away, and Celia wholeheartedly agrees. Later, upon arriving at the meeting, Lysolade asks Aria to wait at the entrance and heads over to Ryo and his companions. Politely, the young man asks the two to leave so he can speak personally with the ruler of Amand. The first thing she says is that Duke Huguenot apologized to Haruto because of yesterday's fight. Therefore, she offers a favor should the young man need it. Seizing the opportunity, the boy requests a written testimony stating that the problem was resolved amicably. Agreeing to pass on the message, Lysolade invites Haruto and his companions to lunch at her place, but he thinks the two are still tired from yesterday's event, so he decides to go alone. Later, Ryo receives the document he requested from Duke Gustav. As a father, the man calls Alphonse and Stuart into the room so the two can apologize to the guest. Immediately, the two kneel before Haruto and beg for his forgiveness. Calmly, he asks the pair to raise their heads. After this, Haruto is taken to the lunch table where Flora and Hiroki were already present. In the middle of the meal, the hero from Beltram misses eating rice with meat. Lysolade mentions that she had asked for this food from the boy's original world to be prepared, but admits it turned out different. Nonetheless, Hiroki is willing to try. A dish with this food is served to him and the others. Upon tasting the first forkful, he finds the flavor similar to cheese risotto, so Lysolade decides to name the dish that. Analyzing the situation, Ryo notes that this rice has the consistency that the Rika Guild developed. Therefore, he reflects that Lysolade must have some knowledge of Earth. Speaking of her, Lysolade asks Haruto what he thought of the food, and he responds that he liked it quite a bit. Curious, Flora wants to know how old he was when he started his journey. He explains that he was 11 and now he is 16. Since his parents died before he began his adventure, he was forced to set out alone in search of someone who had a connection with his father and mother. Should Haruto wish to settle somewhere permanently, Gustav recommends that he choose the kingdom of Beltram and promises to grant favorable terms to a swordsman of his level. In that case, Lysolade doesn't miss the chance to invite Ryo to Amand should he want. But the truth is that the young man is letting his own destiny speak for itself. That is, it's not the time to make projections. Hiroki gets jealous and asks if he is in the presence of the world's savior. Haruto jokes that he could never compare to the true hero of the nation. Taking advantage of a moment, he mentions that another hero has also arrived in the kingdom of Galark. Lysolade explains that it is Sumeragi Setsuki. Right then, Ryo realizes that this is one of the people Miharu is looking for. Finally, Duke Huguenot invites Haruto to the party as several heroes will be present. Moreover, there are rumors that the heroes summoned to the kingdom of Santa Stella will also attend. Given this invitation, Ryo feels he is getting closer to the right people and is happy to have good news to share with Miharu. Meanwhile, during the forest investigation, Alphonse grumbles that he's under the sun because of a commoner like Haruto, until Lucius appears and threatens the group. Returning to the village of the spirit people, Miharu continues practicing her magic with intense focus, but she's interrupted by the sound of Haruto's blade, or at least his mirage. Even though she knows he couldn't possibly be there, she can't help but wonder what he's up to at the moment. After all, during a conversation she had with the villagers, Orphea mentioned that he referred to Miharu as Mi, a nickname Haruto used for her. Nonetheless, she concludes that such coincidences don't happen in real life and refocuses on her training. Upon their arrival, the Beast Girls watch Miharu conjure some water and release it into a glass, impressing them. They praise the human girl in every possible way for her dedication to constantly improve, and Alma asks if there's a specific reason she strives so hard. Somewhat embarrassed, Miharu replies that it's mostly for fun, but the main reason is to feel that she's working hard, just like Haruto, who was away from the village and doing everything for her. Hearing this, the girls conclude that she is doing it for Ryo, but she explains that's not quite it. Instead, it's a way for her not to feel like a burden on him. Sarah believes that such motivation is very relevant when one wants to give their best, and in the end, that's what matters. She finds it incredible that Miharu can create water with so little practice, believing it's because the human is telepathically connected to Ayase, which surely makes her spiritual arts flourish more quickly. Either way, Orphea emphasizes that all this is the result of the girl's effort, and Miharu thanks her friends for their support, promising to thank Ayase when she returns. Meanwhile, Ayase looks distractedly from the balcony until Rona invites her for tea. Upon tasting it, the spirit comments that it tastes like what Ryo makes, and the blonde explains that she was the one who taught him. Just then, a beetle flies through the window and passes by Ayase, who seems too distracted by something else. Noticing that the wind has picked up, Rona stands up to close the doors and windows and asks why her friend is so distracted. Ayase responds that it's nothing. Elsewhere, the soldiers of Beltrum question whether Lucius is an adventurer from Amand and why he's there, as he seems quite suspicious. Without fear of being clear, Lucius replies that he is not from Amand and his presence there is precisely because he is suspicious. Similarly, he asks if the men are Knights of Beltrum, since they were the elite guards assigned to protect Princess Flora. Then Duke Arbor approaches and comments that these soldiers are perfect to become puppets. Hearing this, Alphonse Rodin draws his sword and threatens to beat and confine the outsiders. Lucius laughs at the man's audacity, while Arbor asks his companion to try not to kill any of them. Thus, the Emperor Proxia's right-hand man unsheathes his menacing sword, causing shivers among the soldiers. Even so, Alphonse is ready to fight with a smile on his face, but the commander emphasizes that they should surround the enemies and arrest them, and only if they resist should the soldiers counterattack. However, before any of them could react, Lucius speeds through the enemy ranks and lifts the men with his strength, mocking them for being too slow to have strengthened themselves magically beforehand. Witnessing this, Alphonse thinks this is his golden opportunity to defeat a powerful enemy and prove to the cursed Duke that he is no fool. But as soon as he strikes with his sword, Lucius easily blocks it and laughs at the boy's attempt. Alphonse doesn't give up and uses his physical enchantment skill to break into the rival's defense, but to face the young man last, Lucius pushes him with force against a tree and leaves him out of combat. Having done this, the warrior from Proxia instructs the soldiers of Beltrum to follow the boy's path and also strengthen themselves with magic, which they promptly do. At this time, the commander orders his soldiers to kill the man, but none of them can land a single hit. After having a bit of fun, Lucius decides to thin out the number of opponents and knocks down several along the way, always using his limbs instead of the sword, taking care not to kill anyone. At that moment, Alphonse realizes they are going to lose this battle, for besides being extremely skilled, this man is wielding an enchanted sword. Soon, only 4 warriors of Beltrum are left standing. Then Arbor takes the opportunity to collect the unconscious and separate everyone into a corner. Having done that, Lucius looks directly at Alphonse and announces that his time is coming, causing the boy to practically soil his pants with that threat. Not far from there, the commander orders his men to flee, yet Lucius chases them with his speed far exceeding the opponents. Desperate, the men of Beltrum sprint into the forest, but the enemy reaches them with ease. Last and farther away from the rest, Alphonse is also caught and disarmed on the spot. He tries to flee nonetheless, but Lucius mocks him by practically teleporting to each straight path the boy tries to run. Humiliated in this way, the young man exudes hatred through his eyes, displaying a look that Lucius particularly likes, a corrupt gaze that shows the dirt Alphonse is. Saying these words, the dangerous swordsman approaches the noble who farts in the farofa and offers money in exchange for being spared, promising also not to tell anyone what the enemy did today. With a laugh, Lucius remarks that the boy is really interesting and punches him in the face. At the end of the afternoon, Rio says goodbye at Lancelot's mansion, which intends to enjoy other leisure moments with the adventurer while he's in Amand. For her part, Flora would like to talk with Rio anytime he has some time to spare someday, so he suspects even more that she really noticed something. Hiroki reminds them that they will stay in Amand until they ensure the security of the neighboring lands, so if Rio visits Lancelot's mansion again, Flora will probably get to see him again, which the lady of the house confirms will likely happen. That is, if Rio agrees. Hearing this, Rio assures them that he will be pleased to attend if invited. Thus, without patience and a bit jealous, Hiroki announces that it's time to let the guest go, and that's what he does. After he left, Flora remained thoughtful about the whole situation, while Hiroki seemed troubled by something. Seeing this, Rona wanted to know what was going on, but Hiroki dismissed it, saying it was nothing and that Flora was acting stranger than he was. Thus, Rona should worry about her instead. Embarrassed, the girl denied it was true, but Hiroki pointed out that she had been staring at that man the whole time. Flora asked if he was talking about Haruto, and that's when Hiroki bluntly told her that she knew exactly what he was talking about. To ease her friend's embarrassment, Rona explained that Flora was their kingdom's representative, and since Haruto had saved everyone, the girl likely just wanted to show her gratitude. Moreover, Duke Huguenot seemed interested in recruiting that hero. With this explanation, Hiroki crosses arms, understanding the perspective, but feeling that everyone was making too big a deal about that guy. Rona responded that for ordinary people like her, he was impressive enough, which somewhat soothed the warrior's ego. Before nightfall, Alphonse was dragged along the forest floor to a certain area. Still conscious, he got up and saw 2 mysterious men discussing something alongside his former companions, who were now all monsters dressed in knight uniforms like him. Next to them, a still human warrior writhed in pain on the ground, beginning to undergo the transformation into a monster. Terrified, the young noble asked what these creatures were, to which Arbor explained that he merely reshaped their spirits and bodies. Moreover, the Duke wondered why Lucius had left the boy awake, to which he replied that he could serve to test the revenant element. Arbor regretted that a gem would be wasted if it went wrong, but Lucius reminded him that it would strengthen all the other monsters, so adding them to those already possessed would be more than enough. Thus, Arbor separated the stone while Lucius immobilized Alphonse. The boy screamed in despair as the Duke enchanted the stone and thrust it through the boy's body. However, as the sorcerer explained, there was no pain in this process as it was not the physical body of the boy being harmed. Yet, after embedding the stone in Alphonse, Arbor warned that now the real pain would begin both physically and mentally. Soon after, a transformation began in the young soldier from Beltram. When night finally fell and the search unit had returned, Huguenot feared that a monster beyond imagination had emerged for the soldiers, so he decided to send out a warning about how this matter should be handled. As he had thought, the Duke needed someone skilled to handle military affairs, as Alphonse was as useless as he had suspected. Meanwhile, Flora wondered if she had really been acting strangely as they said. Thinking about Rio and Haruto, she noted that their names were different as well as their hair colors, so they must be two different people. But if they were the same, Flora hadn't had the chance to thank him for saving her that time, nor had she managed to clear up a misunderstanding, and these thoughts deeply saddened the girl. Soon, Lissalot appeared to apologize to Duke Huguenot, thinking she should have sent her men to handle the situation. However, the Duke reminded her that it was he who had said the units should be composed of local knights. Either way, he emphasized that it was still not known whether the soldiers were dead, so Lissalot decided to send more warriors to check the situation. The man advised that she do this tomorrow morning, as there was still a chance they would return by then. Changing the subject, Huguenot expressed his dissatisfaction for having thought that the previous battle had eliminated most of the forest monsters. Then, the ruler shared that there were some monsters that had fled there and did not seem to be alone, so there might still be more of them there, including minotaurs. Considering the worst possible scenario, Huguenot believed that even more powerful creatures might be lurking nearby. In that case, Lissalot decided to send Aria along with a group armed with enchanted swords. Huguenot found it interesting that they were asking for Haruto's help, but Lissalot reminded him that he was not an adventurer from Amand and should not be involved in this situation. Thus, the Duke acknowledged that they should rely only on local adventurers, but the woman explained that she would not use the adventurers because, as there was a possibility of other minotaurs, she preferred to maintain a security force in case Amand was attacked by surprise. In the meantime, Arbor stressed that the last specimen should have completed the assimilation by now, but Lucius was done talking about that. He wanted to eat in peace and thought he wouldn't be able to do that with those zombies looking at him, so he asked the mage to put them all away. Arbor asked to manage them a bit longer since they were a new collection, to which the swordsman replied that this guy's tastes were more bizarre than he had thought. Finally, the mage explained that these monsters were like children to him but decided to remove them all, relieving Lucius. Soon, he announced that everything would be ready just before sunrise, so Lucius shouldn't sleep too much. If the sorcerer was worried about oversleeping, Lucius thought he should talk to the newest member of the group. In a corner, a more developed revenant commented that in that case, before those useless ones completely acclimated, he should have gone alone and taken care of everything. Lucius found the voice of that creature horrifying, while Arbor shared that this was the perfect revenant, more aggressive than strengthened weapons, more skilled in battle and lacking rationality, yet strangely maintaining its intelligence. With that said, Lucius tossed a piece of meat and wine to Alphonse. Meanwhile, in the middle of the night, Ayase woke Rio, having sensed the presence of numerous monsters to the west. At the same moment, revenants approached the western gate, and the guards rang the emergency bell.